Okay, tonight we're going to talk about extending the human life expectancy. And the reason we're going to talk about that is I don't like aging. Aging is expensive, aging is painful, and aging ends with death.
Death ends aging.
So there's nothing good about aging. I am not a medical doctor, I gotta disqualify myself on that, okay? But I did spend 30 years as a research scientist. And one of the places I hung out for a while was the National Cancer Institute, which is part of the National Institutes of Health, which is the largest biomedical research institute in the world. And when I got plopped in there, it was quite an experience. I heard a lot about cures and breakthroughs and all kinds of things. One of the things that I had heard was that the National Institute of Aging, which is one of the institutes of the National Institutes of Health, were keeping animals alive way beyond their normal life expectancy in a healthy fashion. So that kind of piqued my interest a little bit. The nice thing about the NIH when I was there, it was quite academically oriented, a lot of lectures, a lot of sharing of data, so it wasn't long before I had the data. And they were keeping animals alive way beyond their life expectancy in a healthy fashion. So aging is a lifelong accumulation of damage. And we can tolerate some damage, but after a while the damage takes its toll and we begin to age. And the problem with our medical industrial complex in this country is that we don't do anything for ourselves until we manifest diseases of aging, which is one of the reasons that medicine is so expensive, because instead of preventing those things, we just treat them. And we don't do much leading up to them, okay? The current thinking for those who are involved in aging research is that we should do what is called maintenance. We should start doing maintenance. And mostly what I'm going to talk about is how we can do maintenance today. There are actual organizations now and corporations that are involved in anti-aging research, which is a nice thing because 30 years ago it was totally unheard of. There's a couple of problems with this. Number one, how do you validate that a drug or a compound actually retards the human aging process? It would take hundreds of years to validate that. The other problem is that many of the things that have anti-aging properties are actual natural things, and you're not allowed to patent natural things, which is a problem for corporations to make money on this. Okay, it's estimated that the maximum human life spans about 120 years. The oldest recorded lifespan, 122 and a half years. Last year I gave a lot of information on lifestyle. I'm not going to do that so much this time. But I'm going to zoom through what we discussed a year ago and then go into some new things. Incredibly, the most common form of death is heart disease, followed by cancer, followed by lung disease. All right. The preventable causes of death, number one is consuming too many calories and poor eating habits. And incredibly, number two is tobacco still. And a distant number three is alcohol. This is an old graph that I picked up when I was at the NCI, which basically says moderation pays off. And I put this up here so that you can see when I talk about things that you shouldn't do, that you can get away with some things, a little bit of everything. If you're really serious about living healthfully and extending your life, you should find what your optimal weight is and get into it. The sun is a problem for us. The sun is a nuclear reactor in the sky. It causes cancer, it causes cataracts, it causes age spots, it ages us, it puts aging pressure on us. But Moderation pays because it has some benefits. We convert cholesterol to vitamin D by the UV radiation of the sun. Food is an aging compound. Many foods, I shouldn't say all foods, many foods have put aging pressure on our bodies. The biggest one is sugar, for many reasons. The main reason I'll tell you about today is it's because sugar contains glucose, which is good for us in moderation, and it contains fructose, which is converted by our liver into fat. And it's the kind of fat that swells up our fat cells, and it's the kind of fat that irritates our cardiovascular system. If you want more information about that, you can see a video on YouTube that's called Sugar, the Bitter Truth, and what you'll find out is that it's not saturated fat that causes heart disease, it is sugar that causes heart disease. Okay? Fats are not as bad as we thought, but hydrogenated vegetable oils are bad, and we've been saturated with them. Fortunately, 14 months from now, they will be out of our food, unless the Trump administration decides otherwise. And in countries where they took it out of the food, we saw a marked decrease in heart disease. And preventing the diseases of aging is anti-aging in and of itself. A nice way to eat is to eat exactly what we need. And there is a movement called the Soylent movement, and it's not people, but it's good for people. We have pretty much conquered acute microbial diseases. However, evolution is a very sloppy process, and we are stuck with a genome that has 50% viral and bacterial DNA. And we know for a fact that some of those things can come out and hurt us. And that's one of the things we have to fight to increase our life expectancy. The other thing is that many people carry asymptomatic infections that put aging pressure on us. There is a good book that's called Plague Time that describes a lot of those. Okay, last time I showed an anti-aging genetics movie. I'm not going to show that this time except for to say that some people are born with good genes. And the way that this works is that there are certain anti-aging genes that either are present in more numbers or that are somehow enhanced in certain people. Okay, the first thing we talked about last year was the hormonal theory of aging. It's a very relevant place to start because this is how we feel our first mortality when our hormones levels drop. When our hormone levels drop, women go into menopause and men go into menopause. And it's a whole change in our physiology, and we feel it. And this is the beginning of aging. Okay, we've known that the hormonal cycle is a problem for many, many years, and the National Institute of Aging selected this to work on anti-aging technologies back in the 70s. And they selected a compound called DHEA, dehydroepiandrosterone, which is converted to testosterone and estrogen. DHEA drops as we age. It's a marker of aging. The NIH found that when they fed rats and mice DHEA, that it prevented tumors from forming, it prevented fat cells from blooming out, it prevented symptoms of aging, and the lifespan of rodents were considerably extended. And this was kind of a political problem back then too, because the NIH was worried that if this information got out, that everybody would run to get DHEA. So anyways, in humans, DHEA is well tolerated. It's a chemoprotectant, which means it prevents disease. In this case, we know it prevents cancer. We also think it helps to prevent heart disease. It's a mood elevator. It gives us mental energy, cognition. The Mayo Clinic gives it an A+ for helping people who have cognitive problems. It stands to reason that libido, because now we have our hormones back. It's good for our skin, helps hydrate our skin, keep us from having wrinkles. It reduces menopausal symptoms. In fact, it can take you out of menopause back to a menstrual cycle.
You had me in We'll give it to you.
Well, there are ways to fix that too. It helps control weight. Okay? And there's a lot of retrospective studies that show that low levels of DHA are associated with different disease states. Okay, I did show a movie last year about DHA. Okay, so we have anthropological evidence that DHA extends human life expectancy. Going back to the pathways, hormonal pathways, DHA is produced from pregnenolone, and pregnenolone is produced from LDL cholesterol, believe it or not. Pregnenolone is also a precursor which goes away as we age, and it mostly is driven towards progesterone and the anti-inflammatory hormones. And there was a lot of excitement about pregnenolone in the 40s because of the anti-inflammatory properties, but then Merck synthesized cortisone, and that took care of that. But it seems like pregnenolone has significant pharmacological effects, positive pharmacological effects. It's neuroprotective. It makes you feel happy, and it's also safe and well tolerated. Okay, I just have to mention estrogen because I'm sure a lot of people in here understand that there's problems with estrogen. The FDA has designated estrogen as a carcinogen, but estrogen, the active forms of estrogen are actually very good for us. It's good for our brain, our skin, our skeleton. We need estrogen. Boys and girls both need estrogen. Okay? The problems with estrogen is too much or too little, and the synthetics were a disaster. And it's not the active estrogens that are toxic. It is the breakdown, the catabolic products of estrogen that are toxic. And when you eat cruciferous vegetables, you eat a compound called diindolylmethane, which actually breaks estrogens down in a less toxic fashion. And diindolylmethane itself is now being looked at as an anti-aging compound, because some of the characteristics of it is it's anti-inflammatory, right? It's anti-cancer. It prevents apoptosis, which is cell death of healthy cells. We don't want healthy cells to die. It's antiviral, and it helps balance our hormones. Okay, now that we know about our hormones, I told you some things that you shouldn't do. There's something that you can do that's a lot of fun that actually has anti-aging properties to it. Next thing that we talked about last time was resveratrol. A lot of people have heard about that. That's what's in red wine. There's a lot of excitement about resveratrol because it's a multifaceted compound. It's found in nature. It protects plants from UV radiation. It protects plants from viruses. It's good for our heart. It decreases plaque formation in the brain. It's brain friendly. It helps cells in our brain run efficiently. It helps us keep our fat levels down. It is anti-inflammatory, antifungal. It makes our cells run more efficiently, and in the old days we used to call that starvation mode in our cells. We know that it helps mice live longer, and especially it helps mice that are not real healthy live longer. So if you have a hard time changing your lifestyle, this might be the one for you. What it does is activate sirtuins, which are known as anti-aging genes. and there is anthropological data on resveratrol as well. We saw that last year. It's the same kind of a deal. The scientists went to a place where people consume resveratrol accidentally throughout their life, and they have much extended lives and much healthier lives. And the sirtuin genes are turned down all through our body with resveratrol. There's a lot of excitement about resveratrol and resveratrol-like compounds right now because they're proving to be better than we thought. And this is a video of one of the key players in resveratrol, David Sinclair. And there are two major groups, one at MIT and one at Harvard, who's doing research on resveratrol.
So in 1999, I started a new lab at Harvard Medical School. I was 29 and figured I could change the world. It was really exciting. We soon discovered that there are 7 of these longevity genes in our bodies. We call these the sirtuins. So the sirtuins have risen to scientific prominence. There's thousands of papers on these now. And what we've learned is that they seem to protect our body against diseases of aging. So for example, if you put extra copies of these genes into yeast and little nematode worms and flies and mice, they do a lot better. In fact, in most cases, they live longer in a healthy state. So what we need to do is to figure out ways to tweak these genes, to make them more active. And in that way, we might be able to delay all the diseases that we get as we get older, and possibly even reverse aging. So let me explain what the sirtuins do in our body. And I've been very fortunate that the TEDx people have helped me make some videos here. There's a new idea about aging, and that is that as we get older, genes are switched on and off in the wrong way. So when we're young, there's a beautiful symphony playing, but as we get older, the instruments, the orchestra starts to play willy-nilly and screw things up. So if we zoom into the cell, you'll see a chromosome, and if we stretch out the chromosome, that's the DNA, all twirled up there in gray. The pink blobs are proteins called histones that the DNA is packaged in. Red means the gene is off. The problem during aging is that chemicals come in and stick to the histones and turn the genes on. So that's what the green lights mean. This gene that should be off in the brain of my grandmother is now coming on, and that's a terrible thing. And if this gene happened to be a gene that told the liver to be a liver cell, and now it's on in the brain, you can imagine the problem. And that's what we think may be a large part of what happens during aging. This leads to a really important possibility. We used to think that mutations, these irreversible changes to our DNA, are what cause aging. But in fact, if it's this what we call an epigenetic change, that's reversible. So let me show you how we can reverse it. So these sirtuins, they actually make proteins that I'm going to show a cartoon of. It's going to look like a Pac-Man. And what the sirtuin proteins do in our body is that they clip off these chemical groups, see? And now the gene that was on in the old person, green, goes off again. And that's what the sirtuins are doing in our bodies right now. They're stimulated naturally when we don't eat and when we exercise. And if we eat a large hamburger, we shut them down again. This is not good. So what we wanted to do was to find a way to turn the system on, find a molecule that could be taken in a little pill and turn on these sirtuin enzymes. And thereby we could clip off these chemical groups and keep these diseases of aging at bay and keep our whole body healthy. And we might even one day, in theory, reverse aspects of aging. One 10 years ago that we found, which got a lot of media attention, was from red wine. It's called Resveratrol. And don't ask me to say that again. That's a hard word. Resveratrol. And so Resveratrol, as you probably heard, is in red wine. Now, the problem with that is that you'd need to drink about 100 glasses of red wine a day. No, I don't recommend that. Don't do that. And what we've discovered is that resveratrol really does bind to that Pac-Man and sticks on the back of it and makes it chomp faster. And that is how they all work. We were surprised. We didn't realize that resveratrol and these drugs would all work the same way, but they do. It was amazing.
Okay, so this David Sinclair, his claim to fame is that in his lab, he was treating his animals with resveratrol, and he was using certain tests to monitor how well they were doing with resveratrol, how much anti-aging effects they were having. And what he found is that after a certain point in the life cycle of an animal, those effects started to go away, okay? And that was kind of like, oh shoot, you know, it's not going to really extend our life a whole lot, you know, maybe 20%, 30%. And that's what we saw. That's what we see in populations that eat resveratrol, about 20 to 30% life extension. But then he started looking to see what was going on, and what he found was that there's a compound called Nicotinamide Adenine Dinucleotide, which is a coenzyme which goes away as we age. And the sirtuins have an absolute requirement for NAD. He fed his animals nicotinamide, which is also known as niacinamide, and it turned the effect of resveratrol back on. So this is a big, big breakthrough that just has been known for the last few years. And this goes back to hormones. Okay, like I said, cholesterol is converted to pregnenolone, which is converted to DHEA. You see here that that has an absolute requirement for NAD all the way down the line. And all the way through our biochemistry, we have requirement for NAD. So a very simple fix is to feed nicotinamide to the animals or the people. Okay, I have to mention aspirin because aspirin is anti-inflammatory, anti-cancer, and it prevents heart disease. So it is an anti-aging drug for sure. But it's not without side effects. Okay, so this is where we ended last year. Okay, and what we decided was DHEA and resveratrol and niacinamide might be the anti-aging regimen that someone would consider using, right? And you know, we don't know what combining DHEA with resveratrol is going to do. Is it going to push it out even further? Because what we're seeing is an increase in lifespan of about 20, 30, at maximum 40% using these compounds. Okay, and there's probably a reason for that, and that's what we're going to start talking about this time. We're going to talk about telomeres. Telomeres are the end caps of chromosomes, and they organize our DNA, and they're important to our DNA. The problem with our telomeres is that every time our cells divide, the telomeres get shorter and shorter and shorter to the point that our cells become senile and they go into what is called senescence, which is that they're still alive but they can't divide and they're not doing anybody much good. And I have a quick movie that kind of explains.
Inside a human cell is the nucleus. Inside the nucleus are 23 pairs of chromosomes. These are long threads of DNA carrying the genetic information. Right at the ends of the chromosomes are special stretches of DNA called telomeres. They are known to play a crucial role protecting the ends of DNA.
So we kind of think of this like the tip at the end of the shoelace, because if you don't have that tip, then the end of your shoelace frays away very quickly. You know, your shoelace won't work properly if it doesn't have a tip. And it's like the end of a chromosome, the end of a DNA. If it doesn't have an intact tip on it, the telomere, it too will fray away.
When a cell is replicating, it can't copy its DNA all the way to the end, and so telomeres shorten with each replication. If telomeres get critically short, the cell can malfunction and die.
If you don't have caps on the end of a chromosome, then the ends become very sticky. It's almost like the shoelace ends become tied together, and this messes up the genetic material. This can have disastrous consequences for cells, a little bit like if your ends of your shoelaces are tied together, you're going to trip up and fall.
Liz studied tiny single-celled creatures found in ponds called tetrahymena. They have enormous numbers of small chromosomes. She carefully determined the structure and makeup of their telomeres. Then she noticed something odd.
Something puzzling was happening at the ends of the DNA, the very short chromosomes in tetrahymena, and that was that DNA was getting added on to the ends of these chromosomes, and this was not anything that anybody expected DNA to do.
Something was adding new DNA to the ends of the chromosomes. The telomeres were not wearing down, and so the cells could replicate endlessly. They were, in effect, immortal.
We started to think there must be some new process that nobody had ever heard of before. It wasn't in the textbooks, and it wasn't anything that people had described before for DNA, and yet it had to be something to explain what it was we kept on seeing. And so I wanted to hunt this down.
And she did, and she won a Nobel Prize for that. She discovered telomerase in those animals, and we know now that we make telomerase, but we don't make enough of it to keep our telomeres long. But we do know also that, looking at telomeres, that telomeres are a marker for age. Telomeres are a predictor of longevity. We can take a person's cells and look at the length of their telomeres and kind of get an idea how much longer they're going to live, which is kind of scary. And it's also a predictor of disease, because the shorter that telomeres get, the more apt that we are going to have disease. And there's a lot of diseases that have short telomeres. So the idea is to keep our telomeres as long as we can, right? And lifestyle plays a big role in telomeres. And mental outlook plays a big role in telomeres, okay? Something that's relatively new is that omega-3, high-quality omega-3 fatty acids have been shown to help preserve telomeres, but also to help add to telomeres. We should talk about the fact that activation of telomerase creates immortal cells. Cancer cells are immortal because they upregulate telomerase and have other mutations that make them cancer cells. We can reverse problems in aging tissue by increasing the telomere length in tissues, and we can reverse aging in whole organisms by increasing the telomere length. There is a compound called TA65, which was found in the roots of the astragalus plant, and there's actually a patent for this. How they got a patent, I don't know. It's probably a use patent. Any lawyers in here? Because you can't patent naturally occurring compounds, but it might be a novel use patent, what they got. And there's a lot of research, clinical trials that have been done on this TA65. In fact, there are ongoing clinical trials, and there's new clinical trials starting up now for TA65 at the NIH. So if anybody is interested in getting dosed with TA65, you might want to apply for some of those clinical trials. But this is a clinical trial, simple one. It was, you know, a group of almost 100 people broken into two. Half of them didn't get TA65, the other half did. For 1 year, the people who got it grew their telomeres substantially. The ones who didn't get it lost their telomeres, which is to be expected. There are also other things that we're finding can stimulate the production of telomerase in our cells. Milk thistle was one of them. Resveratrol, there's some data that can help preserve and even increase telomeres. So the whole idea with this is that if we keep people negligibly senescent, which means that we keep our cells from being senescent and not able to divide, that we will stay young forever. But I don't know if this is really the Holy Grail, because there are other issues. There's other issues. And one of the issues is that we have evolved to thrive on a toxic waste product from plants, And the oxidative forces of oxygen is eating us alive, constantly eating us alive. And I know everybody's heard about antioxidants, but it is a big, big problem. And basically, what antioxidants do is they just exchange electrons with compounds that are looking for electrons. And we know that free radicals, which are compounds that are looking for electrons, can do a lot of damage to us. It can cause senility, it can cause cancer, it can cause lung problems. And here are some of the diseases that are associated with. And you can tell people who are highly oxidated. You know, they look pretty ragged. So you've all heard about antioxidants, I'm sure. Because you've been told to take them. They're in your vitamins, they're in the food that we eat, they're in vegetables. The problem is the ones that we take are called exogenous antioxidants, are not optimized for us. In fact, they can actually be toxic to us in large doses. We know now that vitamin E and vitamin A, if taken in large doses, increases the risk of cancer and infection. But what we do have also is endogenous antioxidants, and those are the ones that are going to make a difference. So anyways, the endogenous antioxidants are the ones that we really need to pay attention to keep ourselves from aging, because they go away as we age, like a lot of things do. And CoQ10 is one. One that we have some data on as a potential anti-aging compound is superoxide dismutase. And we know that in animals that have higher concentrations of superoxide dismutase live longer. And there are 3 or 4 other endogenous antioxidants, and most of them go away as we age, okay? So paying attention to these is going to be a problem. You can supplement with them, and you can also stimulate their production. I'm showing you, this is kind of a way that some of these antioxidants work, and I show this to you mostly because I want you to see NAD, 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 NAD is everywhere. This is a fullerene. These are used sometimes in skin treatments and stuff, and there was a necessity to evaluate these in animals to see if they were toxic in animals. Rats were fed these fullerenes throughout their entire lifespan, and instead of being toxic, the rats lived twice as long as the control rats, which was amazing, because we have never seen anything that could increase life expectancy, double life expectancy. It would be like treating a human and having them live to 160 years old. And I think about the fact, what would have happened to those animals if we would have given them Resveratrol, niacinamide, DHEA, something to stimulate their telomeres? They might still be alive. One area of aging research that's becoming popular is amino acids, because we're made of amino acids, okay? And there's about 20 amino acids that we use. That the non-essential amino acids are ones that we can make. The essential amino acids are the ones that we can't. The problems with amino acids is that they decrease as we age. One that has been looked at is glycine as a potential anti-aging compound. Glycine has a lot of activities in our bodies. It's a precursor to a lot of things, including glutathione, which is one of the endogenous antioxidants I was talking about. We know that in people who are highly oxidized, in older people who are highly oxidized, if we give them glycine, that it helps them to produce glutathione, which helps them a little bit. We also, in our bodies, sometimes too much of a good thing can be a problem. Glucose is one of those things. If we have too much glucose in our body, our proteins become glycosylated. And it disrupts our proteins, our enzymes, and our structural proteins. And this is what happens to people when they have diabetes. That's how their organs fail and whatnot. Another thing is methionine, which is an amino acid. If you have too much methionine, our proteins become methylated. And in this experiment, they used glycine to help eliminate methionine toxicity, and it extended life expectancy by 30 to 40%. And glycine has a lot of other pharmacological benefits, and a lot of the amino acids do. Okay, most of our amino acids are precursors to something. They're precursors to neurotransmitters. Glycine binds to nerve cells and might calm us down a little bit. Some people use it to sleep with. And there are other amino acids you can use to sleep with. Sleep is one of those things that if you don't get enough sleep, or you get too much sleep, that puts aging pressure on us. I show you here the biosynthesis of glycine, just to point out NAD. So what we've talked about today is our biochemistry, aka our metabolism. Okay? And one of the problems with our metabolism is we don't understand it 100%. Okay? But we do understand that we are going to have to learn how to hack this as we get old if we don't want to have the symptoms of aging. Last time we had 3 compounds. This time I added for a 4-person's anti-aging regimen, DHA, resveratrol, niacinamide, and astragalus extract, because astragalus extract, high quality astragalus extract, does have a little bit of TA65 in it. It's not purified, but it does have it in it, and it does help maintain our telomeres. And it's cheap, so I put the things here that are cheap. If you have money, you're going to want to take C60. That costs about $600 a month, I think, to take that. TA65, let's see, I think that costs about $300 a month. All right. The endogenous antioxidants, you can supplement with them, but they're kind of pricey, and some of them don't. Some of them are acid sensitive, so you have to get them enterically coated so it gets into your intestines. Niacinamide is the precursor to NAD. Now, the 4-person's anti-aging is probably going to stave off disease, a lot of diseases, okay? And probably extend your life 30, 40, maybe 50%. If you are absolutely perfect in taking them in the right amounts every day for the rest of your life. Now this one, the rich person's one, you gotta take everything every day, but this, I think this has potential to, keep us alive a long, 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 long time. The major organ of aging is our brain, because our brain tells us what we will do, what we won't do, etc., etc. One of the things that people have a big problem doing is taking their pills every day. The other problem with brain and aging is that we lose our acuity as we get old. And in fact, by the time we're in our 60s, a reasonable percentage of us are not going to be able to take care of themselves. And what we did today is we talked about a lot of things that can help our brains. DHA helps our brains. Pregnenolone helps our brains. Resveratrol helps our brains. The antioxidants help our brains. And yes, a friend of mine wrote his doctoral thesis on DHA, and there was a lot. He summarized a lot of clinical data. And mostly what the anti-aging drugs are looked at is in older people, right? Because in older people, you can actually see an improvement with these things. If you're a relatively young, healthy person and you start taking these anti-aging drugs, you're not going to feel a whole lot different, But if you're already aging and you take some of these drugs, it can improve you. And that's why they do most of the clinical studies in older people. But yes, there's thousands of peer-reviewed journal articles on DHA, resveratrol, TA65, all these things. One of the things that there isn't studies on is the synergy of these things. I can't find any studies on the synergy of these things, okay? But because they each have benefits, their own benefits, I use them, okay?
John,
Yes, ma'am.
I'm over 80. At
Excellent.
what point in my life would these be effective?
They will be effective on you right now. We are at the point that we think we can reverse the aging process. The astragalus extract that I take is not well defined. It's just astragalus extract. I just take 4 tablets. I buy it online. It has to be an extract. It's not the powdered stuff. Because in the extract, we know that there's some TA65 in it.
So it's extracted from some plants?
It's a root.
It's a root.
John, earlier you said something about essential fatty acids, and it kind of went right by me. What?
I said that omega-3 fatty acids help to stabilize our telomeres, and also now we have data that's pretty new that it helps to extend our telomeres.
And that is that what people take fish oil for?
Well, that's one benefit of taking fish oil.
Flaxseed oil.
You can take flaxseed oil too, yeah.
Yeah.
Those are omega-3s.
And it also helps to maintain the myelin.
There's a lot of benefits taking fish oil and eating fish. Yeah.
TA65.
TA65 is directed towards telomeres.
Telomerase activator.
Telomerase activator 65. And there's a lot of peer-reviewed clinical data on TA65. One thing that we see also is if you give mice and rats activated carbon on a daily basis, that they'll live 40% longer.
Just activated
Just
carbon?
activated carbon. Last year, some people in here asked well, what's going to happen to society if everybody lives long, right?
Right.
We'll worry about that when we get
75 will be the Social Security
But
age.
I'll tell you exactly what's going to happen is that for the same reason that the average American doesn't get a flu shot, they're not going to do this. If they do it, they'll do it for a little while and forget about it, and it's not going to work. It's going to take somebody who is diligent, ambitious, and wants to do this, to do it.
And we'll be meeting here forever, well into the 22nd century.
So have you looked at I've looked into this a lot actually, many years ago. There's more information out than there was a decade ago. But one of the big concerns was there was upregulation and downregulation of endogenous production. And then if your body would then recover, so for instance, if you take testosterone as a good example, or any hormone, your body will lower its own endogenous production. And then if you stop taking it, or for any reason, are
Yes.
any of these is there going to be a recovery? And then the other
Well,
question
that's
is,
why I say you got to take
the
it
other
every
question is,
day.
even if you take this
Yeah, take it
at
and
a lower,
Yes.
you're saying yes, you haven't heard the question, so you listen.
No, it was just.
Okay, okay, who's the
We
listener?
anticipate.
No, the point is, yeah, well, you should listen. As the trend goes down over time, you think you can elevate it continuously. The question is the endogenous being carved out of the end, and then it's trying to compensate, to lower it no matter what?
Yes. That's a good question because that's a real phenomenon.
Right, the question is, no matter how much you take, you'll get a trend downward. Your
That when
body
you add things like DHEA and your body doesn't produce as much of it because it's there, right? You're providing.
But John, it's just like women who take hormone replacement therapy. Over time, the body, no matter how long you take it, your body will quit absorbing it at some point in time. That's what the gynecologists tell you. You can take it and it's okay for a certain period of time.
Part of the problem is our biochemistry, right? As your biochemistry gets older and more decrepit,
That's actually the London
it's not
subway.
processing. It's not processing things, which is why we're looking at things such as niacinamide that mediates a lot of the reactions in our biochemistry. And we probably will have to look at other cofactors as well to make these things remain active.
I guess pertinent to this gentleman's question, in generalizing that, have there been observed any negative effects from taking all these substances?
No, DHA has never shown any toxicities. Resveratrol has not been shown to have any toxicities. The one issue that people bring up with the telomerase activators is that cancer upregulates telomerase, right? That's why cancer is immortal. The stimulators for telomerase, if you add them, they work while they're there. You take them away, they stop working, okay? In fact, because it's so expensive, the TA65, and because it does such a good job, you could probably get away only taking it, once for a year every 2 or 3 years.
What they need to do is they need to give these mice, or whatever model they're in, they need to give them the compound for a period of time, then stop it and see if the mice actually die sooner.
In healthy animals, they usually will survive having this stuff taken away and start producing their own again.
Yeah.
But there is a period of ill health. There can be a period of ill health if you take DHEA and then you stop taking it. You'll feel it for a while because you're not producing as much of it, but it'll come back.
Say that cancer cells are immortal.
Cancer cells are immortal. The definition of a cancer cell is that it is immortal and it lacks contact inhibition. And that's why they overgrow everything, right? So just the telomerase activation does not make a cell a cancer cell. You have to also have other mutations.
But how do we know in 10 years from now, further research is going to tell you that, whoops, you shouldn't have taken that after all?
It's quite possible that something will go wrong on some of these things. But there's tens of thousands of peer-reviewed journal articles on these things. A lot of these are natural compounds that our body already makes or utilizes. You know, there are people who do it, and they report amazing results on it because a lot of things as simple as eyesight and hearing change, you know, and skin tone and mental function.
John,
Yes.
are there any foods that may encompass some of these that would be beneficial, not to the extent that the combination is, but that would provide some benefits? And
Yeah,
what
I
are
mean,
they?
you know, we saw that movie about DHEA,
Yeah.
Okinawa. Well, it was found that those people were eating yams that had high levels of DHEA in them.
Do all yams?
Not all yams. I can't tell you which ones. And resveratrol is in the roots of a lot of plants and in wine and grapes.
You have to drink 100 glasses of wine.
I've been reading recently on collagen like taking the animal bones, making soup, you know, or broth out of it, and getting that high dose of collagen every day. I mean, do you know anything about that?
That's not a bad idea. The other place you can get amino acids too. Our synthesis of amino acids. We synthesize some of our own amino acids. And one of the problems is as we age, we don't synthesize them as well, right? Some things that have amino acids, collagen, gelatin. Gelatin has a lot of amino acids and
And
a
it's
lot of
anti-inflammatory.
that's anti-inflammatory. So if you want to supplement gelatin, it's really good for you.